Jack Rogers was having a normal day on the Galactic Alliance scout ship Evergreen. He sat at his station on the bridge, checking the sensor readings as he did every day for the past 7 years. The ship was patrolling the outer reaches of Alliance space, far from the busy trade routes and populated worlds. It was quiet work, but Jack enjoyed the peace. The quiet was shattered by a sudden loud alarm. Jack jumped in his seat, his fingers immediately moving across his control panel to identify the cause. Proximity alert, the ship computer announced. Unknown vessel detected. Jack frowned at his screen. That was strange. There shouldn't be any ships in this sector. The nearest outpost was at least 3 days away at top speed. On screen, he ordered. The main view screen at the front of the bridge lit up, showing empty space. Then the computer adjusted, zooming in on a small point of light. As the image enhanced, Jack's eyes widened. The ship was unlike any he had seen before. It had a sharp, angular design with what looked like weapon ports along its hull. It was dark gray in color with no visible markings or identification, and it was heading straight for the Evergreen. Captain White to the bridge, Jack called into the communication system. We have a situation. He continued studying the readings while waiting for the captain. The ship's energy signature was off the charts, suggesting a power system the Alliance had never encountered. Its speed was impressive too, closing the distance faster than most scout vessels could manage. Captain Nancy White entered the bridge moments later. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. 20 years of command experience had taught her to assess situations quickly. Report, she said, moving to stand behind Jack. Unknown vessel, Captain, Jack replied. It appeared suddenly on our sensors at coordinates 227 Mark IV. It's on an intercept course. White leaned forward to study the screen. Origin? Unknown. It doesn't match any Alliance or known species design in our database. The ship's communications. Officer Susan Miller turned from her console with a surprised look on her face. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the vessel. She paused, checking her readings again. It's in English. White raised an eyebrow. English? The old Earth language? Yes, Captain, Susan confirmed. Clear as day. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. Earth was the original home of humans before they spread throughout Alliance space. English was now a historical language studied by scholars but rarely used in daily communication. The Alliance had adopted a common language centuries ago. Put it through, White ordered. Susan pressed a few buttons on her console, and a voice filled the bridge. Unidentified vessel, this is the Earthship Horizon. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The voice was firm, authoritative, and undeniably human. Jack exchanged looks with Susan. Earthships didn't travel this far. Earth itself was now a protected historical site. The planet was preserved but no longer had a significant space presence. After the failed colony mission centuries ago, humans had focused on developing closer worlds within Alliance space. Open a channel, White said. When Susan nodded, she spoke clearly. This is Captain Nancy White of the Galactic Alliance vessel Evergreen. We are on routine patrol. We mean no harm. There was a pause before the reply came. Galactic Alliance? What species are you? White looked confused. I'm human, as is most of my crew. The Alliance includes 17 sentient species with humans, being one of the founding members. Another pause, longer this time. When the voice returned, it was tense. Stand by, Evergreen. The captain turned to Jack. Tactical assessment? Jack studied his readings more carefully. The vessel is heavily armed, Captain. I'm detecting multiple weapon systems, all powered up but not currently targeting us. Their shields are active. Based on these readings, they could do serious damage to us if they wanted to. Why would an Earthship be out here armed like a warship and apparently unaware of the Alliance? White wondered aloud. The ship's AI spoke up. Warning. Enemy warship detected. Why do you classify it as an enemy? White asked. Weapon systems. Online and targeting arrays active, the AI replied. Design parameters consistent with military vessels. Additional significant data point. The vessel is of human origin. White frowned. That's not possible. Humans haven't built warships in generations, not since the Alliance peace accords. Nevertheless, the AI continued. Scans confirm human life signs aboard the vessel. The communication system came to life. Again. Evergreen, this is Captain John Harris of the Earthship Horizon. Please verify. You claim to represent a galactic alliance that includes humans? That is correct, White replied. The Galactic Alliance has existed for over 200 years. Earth is a protected member world. That's impossible, Harris said flatly. Earth has had no contact with alien species except... He didn't finish the sentence. Jack watched as Captain White's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. Captain Harris, I believe we have much to discuss. With your permission, I would like to send a small team to your ship, or you may send representatives to ours. You're suggesting a face-to-face meeting? Harris sounded suspicious. I believe it's the quickest way to clear up what seems to be a significant misunderstanding. There was a long silence. Jack watched the weapon readings on his screen, ready to raise shields if needed. Finally, Harris responded. Very well, you may. Send a shuttle with no more than 4 people, unarmed. We will provide docking instructions. Agreed, White said. We'll prepare immediately. When the communication ended, White turned to her crew. Jack, Susan, you're with me, and we'll need Dr. Alan Peterson for his historical knowledge. Captain, Jack said carefully, do you have a theory about this ship? White nodded slowly. I do. And if I'm right, we're about to rewrite Alliance history. The lost colony ship Pioneer that vanished 300 years ago. I don't think it was lost after all. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The Pioneer had been humanity's first attempt at interstellar colonization before the formation of the Alliance. It had disappeared with 2,000 colonists aboard. If these humans were their descendants, prepare the shuttle, White ordered, and alert Alliance headquarters. Tell them we've made first contact with a long-lost branch of humanity, and that they appear to have spent the last 3 centuries preparing for war. Jack Rogers checked his uniform one last time before boarding the shuttle. He had never expected to be part of a first contact team, especially not with other humans. Captain White stood beside him, along with Susan Miller and Dr. Alan Peterson, the ship's historian and cultural expert. Remember, White said quietly, these people may look like us, but they've been separated from Earth culture for centuries. We don't know what beliefs or customs they've developed. The small Alliance shuttle launched from the Evergreen and moved slowly toward the human warship. Up close, the horizon was even more impressive. Its hull was dark and sleek, with visible weapon ports and sensor arrays unlike anything in the Alliance fleet. It was built for war in a way Alliance ships had not been for generations. Look at the design, Dr. Peterson said, pointing at the angular hull sections. No wasted space, no concessions to comfort. Pure function. The shuttle received automated docking instructions and settled into a small bay on the side of the warship. The airlock cycled, and the Alliance team stepped through into the horizon. 3 humans in dark uniforms waited for them. Their clothes were simple but well made, with rank insignia and patches Jack didn't recognize. 2 men and 1 woman, all standing with military posture. Welcome aboard the Horizon, said the woman in the center. I'm Captain Olivia Carter. This is Commander Frank Daniels, my second in command, and Dr. Linda Summers, our chief scientist. Jack noticed they all wore sidearms. The Alliance team had come unarmed as agreed. Captain White stepped forward. Captain Nancy White of the Galactic Alliance vessel Evergreen. This is my tactical officer Jack Rogers, communications specialist. Susan Miller and Dr. Alan Peterson, our historian. Captain Carter's eyes narrowed slightly at the mention of historian, but she nodded politely. Please follow me. We've prepared a meeting room. They walked through the ship's corridors. Jack noted everything he saw. The hallways were utilitarian but clean. Crew members they passed stood aside and watched with obvious curiosity. Some looked suspicious, others simply amazed. The meeting room was small but functional, with a table and chairs. Captain Carter gestured for them to sit. I'll be direct, she said once they were seated. Your claim to represent a galactic alliance that includes humanity raises many questions. Earth had no contact with alien species before we left, and certainly no alliance. White nodded. The Galactic Alliance was formed approximately 200 years ago. Earth was one of the founding members, along with 4 other spacefaring species. 200 years ago? Commander Daniels leaned forward. The Pioneer left Earth over 300 years ago. The Alliance team exchanged glances. Dr. Peterson spoke up. You're from the Pioneer Colony mission? The ship that was lost? We weren't lost, Captain Carter said firmly. We were attacked. A heavy silence fell over the room. Attacked? White asked finally. By whom? We don't know, Carter replied. Ships we'd never seen before. They disabled our engines and weapons. Many died. The survivors managed to land the damaged ship on a habitable planet we now call New Terra. Dr. Peterson shook his head. All Earth records indicate the Pioneer suffered a catastrophic drive failure. There was no mention of an attack. Your records are wrong, Commander Daniels said flatly. We still have the original sensor logs and survivor accounts. We were attacked, deliberately. Jack watched the human officers carefully. They clearly believed what they were saying. For 3 centuries, Carter continued, we've rebuilt our society. We developed our technology, expanded to other planets in our system, and recently perfected faster-than-light travel. The Horizon is one of our first deep space exploration vessels. Exploration vessels? Jack couldn't help asking. It looks like a warship to us. Carter didn't deny it. We've always known we weren't alone in the galaxy, and that at least one species out there was hostile to humans. We've prepared accordingly. White leaned forward. Captain Carter, I understand your position, but I assure you the Alliance has no record of any attack on the Pioneer. The incident occurred before the Alliance existed. Whatever happened, it wasn't perpetrated by any current Alliance member. Perhaps, Carter said, her expression guarded. Or perhaps the truth was hidden. Dr. Summers, who had been quiet until now, spoke. May I ask a question? You claim humans are part of this alliance. How many human worlds are there? 27 fully developed colonies, Dr. Peterson answered, plus numerous outposts and research stations. Earth itself is now a protected, historical preserve with limited population. Carter and Daniels exchanged looks of surprise. 27 worlds? Daniels repeated. We have 4, all in the same star system. And you've had contact with how many alien species? Dr. Summers asked. 17 are full Alliance members, Peterson replied. We have diplomatic relations with about a dozen more. The human officers seemed stunned by this information. So, while we've been rebuilding and preparing for another attack, Carter said slowly, the rest of humanity has been establishing colonies and making friends with aliens? Yes, White said gently. The Pioneer disaster was a turning point in human history. After losing that ship, Earth developed better drives and eventually made successful contact with other species. The Galactic Alliance was formed as a mutual defense and cultural exchange pact. Jack could see Captain Carter processing this information. Her worldview was being challenged. Centuries of her people's history were being questioned. Captain White, she said finally, I would like to see these records for myself, and I want to send a message to our fleet headquarters. They need to know what we've discovered. Of course, White agreed. We have a complete historical database aboard the Evergreen, and we can relay any message you wish to send through Alliance communications networks. Fleet headquarters? Susan asked cautiously. Captain Carter nodded. The Horizon is just one of many ships. We have a substantial fleet patrolling our system and expanding outward. More ships will be joining us soon. Jack felt a chill. A human civilization unknown to the Alliance with a substantial military fleet was about to make its presence known, and they had spent centuries believing they were victims of an alien attack. There's much we have to learn from each other, White said diplomatically. Perhaps we could arrange for more formal meetings between our governments. Yes, Carter agreed. That would be wise. In the meantime, Dr. Summers will remain aboard your vessel as our observer, if acceptable. Commander Daniels and I need to consult with our leadership. As the meeting concluded, Jack wondered what this discovery would mean for the Alliance. A lost branch of humanity had returned to the stars, armed and suspicious. He hoped diplomacy would prevail, because the alternative was unthinkable. Back on the Evergreen, the Alliance crew gathered in the main conference room. Dr. Linda Summers from the Horizon sat stiffly in a chair, watching everyone with careful eyes. Captain White had called all senior officers to discuss what they had learned. As you all know by now, White began, we have made contact with humans from the Pioneer colony ship. They've built their own civilization over the past 3 centuries, believing they were attacked by alien forces. Greg Porter, the chief engineer, shook his head in amazement. And they've been preparing for war all this time, against an enemy they couldn't even identify? That's correct, White confirmed. According to Captain Carter, their entire society has been shaped by this belief. They've built a substantial military fleet and have been expanding their reach, looking for whoever attacked them. Jack glanced at Dr. Summers, who remained silent but watchful. Her dark eyes took in everything, missing nothing. The problem, Dr. Peterson said, is that we have no record of any attack on the Pioneer. According to Alliance Historical Archives, the ship was lost due to an experimental drive malfunction. It was a tragedy, but not an attack. With respect, Dr. Summers spoke for the first time, her voice calm but firm. Our historical records include detailed sensor data and survivor accounts of the attack, multiple ships of unknown design firing energy weapons that Earth had never seen before. Could we examine this evidence? Jack asked. Summers hesitated. I'm not authorized to share military data. Captain White leaned forward. Dr. Summers, if we're going to resolve this misunderstanding, we need to compare our records. This is too important for secrecy. Summers considered this, then nodded slowly. I'll request permission from Captain Carter. While they waited for a response from the Horizon, Jack studied the historical records of the Pioneer mission. The ship had been Earth's first attempt at true interstellar colonization, carrying 2,000 people to establish a settlement on a planet orbiting Tau Ceti. All contact had been lost shortly after the ship made its final faster-than-light jump. Search missions found no trace. The official investigation concluded that the experimental drive had failed catastrophically. Message from the Horizon, Susan announced. Captain Carter has authorized limited sharing of historical records. Dr. Summers accessed a secure data device and transferred files to the Evergreen's computer system. The main screen displayed grainy footage from 3 centuries ago. The quality was poor, but they could clearly see energy weapons striking the Pioneer from several small, fast-moving ships. I don't recognize that ship design, Captain White said, studying the screen. Neither do I, Jack agreed. It doesn't match any current Alliance species. Dr. Peterson was searching through the historical database. Computer, analyze the unknown vessels and compare with all historical records of spacecraft, including extinct species. The computer worked for several moments before responding. Match found. Vessels match configuration of Savari raider ships, circa 2450-2580 standard years. The Savari? White asked, surprised. Dr. Peterson nodded, his expression grave. A predatory species that went extinct approximately 250 years ago. Before the Alliance formed, they were notorious raiders, attacking developing spacefaring civilizations for resources and technology. Dr. Summers leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the screen. You're saying the species that attacked us is extinct? Yes, Peterson confirmed. The Savari civilization collapsed due to internal conflicts shortly after their last major raiding period. They're mentioned in early Alliance historical records as one of the reasons the first interspecies defense treaties were formed. Jack watched Dr. Summers carefully. Her face showed shock, then disbelief. Our entire civilization, she said quietly, built around preparing for war against an enemy that's been gone for centuries? The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. We need to get this information to New Terra immediately, Summers said finally. Our government needs to know. Captain White nodded. We'll help you send a secure transmission through Alliance networks. And we should notify Alliance Command as well. The discovery of your civilization is significant. While communications officers prepared the transmissions, Jack approached Dr. Summers, who stood alone by a viewport staring at the stars. I can't imagine what you're feeling right now, he said gently. She turned to him with troubled eyes. Our entire society has been shaped by the belief we were victims of an unprovoked attack. We've spent generations building weapons, training soldiers, preparing for a war against an unknown enemy. She shook her head. What happens to us now? What happens to a civilization built for war when it learns the enemy is already gone? Jack had no easy answer. Your people have done remarkable things despite the circumstances. You've built a society that survived, thrived even. You've developed your own technologies, colonized multiple worlds. Built on a foundation of fear and suspicion, she replied. Our children learn from their earliest years that the galaxy is hostile, that aliens can't be trusted. And yet here you are, Jack pointed out, working with us. People adapt. Civilizations evolve. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the bridge. Captain White to the command center immediately, came the announcement. When they arrived at the bridge, the tactical officer on duty looked concerned. Captain, we're detecting multiple ships entering the system. Configuration matches the horizon. How many? White asked. 3 vessels so far, Captain, all larger than the horizon. Dr. Summers stepped forward. That would be the Sentinel and the Guardian with a support vessel. They were scheduled to rendezvous with us here. More warships, Jack said quietly. Captain, the communications officer called out. We're receiving an emergency transmission from Alliance Command. Admiral Bill Young is en route with 4 defense vessels. They've detected the human ships and are concerned about a potential threat. White frowned. That's not the response I was hoping for. Get me a direct line to the Admiral. On the main screen, Admiral Young appeared. He was an older man with a stern expression. Captain White, I'm ordering you to withdraw from your current position. We're detecting multiple unknown warships entering the system. Admiral, the situation is under control, White replied firmly. These are human vessels from the lost pioneer colony. We're in peaceful communication with them. We've reviewed your preliminary report, Captain. A lost human colony that's built a war fleet and believes it was attacked by aliens? The Security Council considers this a potential first contact crisis. Sir, with respect, escalating our military presence will only make things worse. These humans are cautious but not hostile. We need diplomacy, not warships. The Admiral's expression remained hard. My orders stand, Captain. The Alliance Defense Fleet will secure this system while diplomatic teams are assembled. The transmission ended abruptly. White turned to Dr. Summers, who looked deeply troubled. Your people will view this as confirmation of their worst fears, White said grimly. Yes, Summers agreed. Captain Carter already distrusts the Alliance. Explanation about the Savari. Alliance warships arriving will seem like a hostile action. Jack could see the situation deteriorating rapidly. Centuries of human preparation for war was about to collide with Alliance security protocols. Unless someone found a way to diffuse the tension, their historic reunion might end in tragedy. The situation grew tense over the next 24 hours. The 3 human ships from New Terra formed a defensive triangle at the edge of the system. The Evergreen remained between them and the approaching Alliance Defense Fleet vessels. Captain White had placed her ship in a precarious position, trying to prevent a confrontation. Admiral Young's ships will arrive in 6 hours, Jack reported during the emergency staff meeting. The human vessels are maintaining their position but have activated all defensive systems. And Captain Carter? White asked. She's returned. To the horizon. Commander Daniels is also back aboard their ship. They've been in constant communication with their other vessels. Dr. Summers, who had chosen to remain on the Evergreen as a liaison, looked deeply troubled. Our military protocols are clear. When facing unknown forces, we prepare for the worst. Captain Carter will view the approaching Alliance fleet as a potential threat. White nodded grimly. And Admiral Young views your ships the same way. It's a classic standoff situation. Have you shared the information about the Savari with your fleet? Jack asked Summers. Yes, she confirmed. I've sent all the historical data we discovered, but it will take time for our leaders to process this information. 3 centuries of belief don't change overnight. Susan Miller, who had been monitoring communications, spoke up. Captain, I've been reviewing transmissions between the human ships. There seems to be disagreement among their commanders. Some are questioning the Alliance explanation about the Savari. What kind of disagreement? White asked. Some officers believe this could be an elaborate deception. They're suggesting the Alliance might be connected to whoever attacked the Pioneer, using this story about an extinct species as cover. Dr. Summers nodded reluctantly. That would be consistent with our military training. We're taught to question unexpected information, especially when it comes from unknown sources. Jack frowned. So they think we're lying about the Savari? Some might, Summers admitted. Others will accept the evidence, but suspicion runs deep in our culture. The bridge communicator chimed. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the horizon. Captain Carter wishes to speak with you. Put her through, White ordered. Carter's face appeared on the main screen. Her expression was professional but tense. Captain White, our sensors detect 4 Alliance warships approaching. This system at high speed. This was not mentioned in our discussions. I was just informed myself, White replied honestly. Admiral Young is acting on preliminary reports about your vessels. I've been trying to convince Alliance Command that there's no threat here. No threat? Carter's eyebrow raised slightly. You have 4 warships approaching 3 of ours. I would call that a potential threat. The situation is entirely manageable through diplomacy, White insisted. My ship will remain between your vessels and the Alliance fleet. No one wants conflict. Carter studied White's face for a moment. I believe you mean that, Captain. But my orders are clear. We will maintain defensive positions and will respond to any aggressive actions. After the transmission ended, White turned to her officers. We need options. How do we prevent a shooting war between these 2 forces? We could contact the Alliance Council directly, Susan suggested. Bypass Admiral Young and appeal to the diplomatic corps. There's no time, Jack pointed out. The Council would debate for days. We have hours. Dr. Peterson, who had been quietly consulting historical records, looked up suddenly. I may have an idea. Dr. Summers, does your ship have visual records? Of the original Pioneer survivors? Summers nodded. Of course, they're considered historical treasures. And I assume your people know their names and family histories? Yes, they're taught to all children in school. Peterson turned to Captain White. Captain, I suggest we search Alliance genealogical records for descendants of the Pioneer crew's Earth families. If we can find direct relatives of the original, colonists still living in Alliance space, White's eyes widened as she understood. We could establish a direct human connection between our 2 civilizations. Blood ties that bypass political suspicions. Exactly, Peterson said. It would be hard for military leaders on either side to justify hostilities if we can prove these are literally long-lost family members finding each other again. They immediately set to work. Dr. Peterson and Dr. Summers compiled lists of the original Pioneer colonists while Alliance databases were searched for matching family names and genetic markers. It was tedious work, cross-referencing 300-year-old records with modern Alliance citizen databases. Jack helped where he could, but found himself increasingly concerned about the approaching Alliance fleet. He checked tactical displays regularly, watching the countdown until Admiral Young's ships arrived. 4 hours later, Susan called out excitedly. We have matches! 26 confirmed genetic lineages connecting Pioneer colonists to current Alliance citizens. Dr. Summers stared at the screen in disbelief. These are our families? The ones who stayed behind on Earth? Yes, Peterson confirmed gently. Your people weren't forgotten, Dr. Summers. These families spent generations wondering what happened to their loved ones on the Pioneer. Summers touched the screen. reading names and looking at faces that somehow resembled her own people back on New Terra. "This changes everything," she whispered. Captain White wasted no time. "Susan, establish communication channels with both Captain Carter and Admiral Young. We need to share this information immediately." Within minutes, they had both commanders on split-screen communication. Captain Carter, Admiral Young, White. Began. "We've made a discovery you both need to see before your forces come into direct contact." Dr. Summers stepped forward. "Captain Carter, we found our families, the people we left behind on Earth 3 centuries ago. Their descendants are still alive in Alliance space." She began sharing the genealogical data, showing the direct connections between the lost colonists and current Alliance citizens. Names, faces, genetic markers that proved beyond doubt these were branches of the same family trees, separated for generations but unmistakably related. Carter's expression softened slightly as she reviewed the data. "This is unexpected." Admiral Young, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Captain White, while this information is certainly interesting, it doesn't change the security concerns of—" White cut him off politely but firmly. "Admiral, with respect, it changes everything. We're not dealing with unknown aliens or potential enemies. We're witnessing a family reunion 3 centuries in the making. The pioneer colonists aren't a lost footnote in history books. They're alive. They've built their own civilization, and now they've found their way back to us." Young hesitated, clearly not expecting this emotional appeal. "Admiral," White continued, "I'm formally invoking Section 7 of the Alliance Charter, which grants mediation priority to the vessel of first contact. I'm requesting that your fleet hold position at the system's edge until proper diplomatic channels can be established." The Admiral frowned. "That's an unusual interpretation of Section 7, Captain." "Perhaps," White acknowledged, "but shooting at long-lost human cousins on their first contact with the Alliance would be an even more unusual welcome." After a long pause, Young nodded reluctantly. "Very well. We'll hold position temporarily, but my ships will remain at combat readiness." "As will ours," Carter added, though her tone had lost some of its edge. As the communications ended, Jack approached Captain White. "That buys us some time, but we're still facing a potential confrontation." White nodded. "True. But we've changed the narrative. This isn't about unknown warships anymore, it's about a family reunion, and that makes all the difference." 3 weeks passed in careful negotiations. The human ships from New Terra maintained their position at the edge of the system, while the Alliance fleet kept a respectful distance. The Evergreen had become the center of diplomatic talks between the two sides. Captain White had converted the ship's main conference room into a negotiation chamber. Today was special. The formal signing of the first agreement between the Alliance and the human government of New Terra. Jack stood at attention, in his dress uniform, watching as officials from both sides gathered around the long table. Dr. Summers, now officially the first ambassador from New Terra to the Alliance, sat on one side. Across from her was Ambassador Paul Wilson, sent by the Alliance Council. "Hardy. To believe how far we've come in 3 weeks," Susan whispered to Jack as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Jack nodded. The situation had seemed hopeless at first, with both sides ready for conflict. But the discovery of family connections between New Terra colonists and Alliance citizens had changed everything. Within days, the first family reunions had been arranged via video communication. The emotional impact of seeing long-lost relatives finding each other after 3 centuries apart had softened even the most hardened military commanders. Captain Carter entered the room, now wearing a formal, diplomatic uniform rather than her military attire. She nodded respectfully to Captain White before taking her seat beside Dr. Summers. "The Treaty of Recognition is ready for signing," announced the Alliance official, managing the ceremony. "This document formally acknowledges the sovereign status of the United Colonies of New Terra and establishes diplomatic relations with the Galactic Alliance." Jack watched as Carter and Summers exchanged glances. They had both been changed by these events. Carter had been skeptical at first, questioning everything the Alliance told them about the Savari. But when 3 separate research teams from New Terra independently verified the Alliance historical records. Even she had to accept the truth. Ambassador Wilson spoke first. Today marks the correction of a tragic misunderstanding that has lasted for centuries. The loss of the pioneer was a wound in human history that never properly healed. To discover that not only did many colonists survive, but they built a thriving civilization is a cause for celebration throughout Alliance space. Dr. Summers nodded and addressed the gathering. For generations, our people believed we were victims of an unprovoked attack. We built our society around the need for defense against unknown threats. While we now know the Savari are long gone, the strength and resilience our people developed will serve us well as we join the galactic community. The treaty was signed with little fanfare but enormous significance. It was just the first of many agreements to come. Working groups had already been established to handle technology exchange, cultural programs, and carefully negotiated military protocols. After the ceremony, Jack found himself standing next to Captain Carter as they watched Earth and New Terra officials mingling. "Your ship's computer was right that first day," Carter said with a small smile. "We were an enemy warship." "But not anymore," Jack pointed out. Carter nodded thoughtfully. "Old habits die hard. Our entire society was built around preparing for war against aliens. It will take time for our people to fully trust the Alliance." "Understanding takes time," Jack agreed. "But look how far we've come already." Across the room, Dr. Summers was showing family photos from New Terra to an elderly Alliance citizen who had been identified as her distant cousin. Their shared ancestor had been siblings, one who stayed on Earth, one who left on the Pioneer. Now their descendants were reunited. "We've received the first diplomatic delegation from Earth," Carter said. "They arrived at New Terra yesterday via Alliance transport. The people are overwhelmed. Many never truly believed Earth still existed." Jack understood. "And how are your military leaders handling the transition?" Carter smiled wryly. "Some better than others. We've spent generations building the largest fleet in our sector. Now we're being asked to integrate it with Alliance defense forces or partially convert vessels to exploration and science." "Change is difficult," Jack acknowledged, "but your people have already proven they can adapt to incredible challenges." "True," Carter agreed. "And I must admit the Alliance has been more accommodating than I expected, accepting our ships into joint patrols, sharing defense protocols." The Alliance had indeed made extraordinary efforts to welcome the New Terra forces. Admiral Young, initially the most skeptical, had personally helped create integration plans for the human fleet. Captain White joined them, looking pleased with the proceedings. "Good news from the Council. They've approved the joint mission to Earth. The Evergreen and the Horizon will travel together, carrying the first official New Terra delegation to visit Earth in 3 centuries. Carter's expression softened. "My crew is honored. Many never dreamed they would see the homeworld." "It's fitting," White said. "Our ships met as potential enemies. Now we'll journey to Earth as partners." Jack watched as more people entered the conference room. Several New Terra citizens were being introduced to their distant Earth relatives. The family reunions had become powerful symbols of this historical reconnection. Dr. Peterson approached with an elderly man beside him. "Captain Carter, I'd like to introduce you to Professor George Miller. He's been researching the Pioneer mission his entire career. His great-great-grandmother was on the original Earth search team that tried to find the missing ship." Carter shook his hand with genuine emotion. "Professor, your ancestors' work was not in vain. We were found just a few centuries later than hoped." The professor's eyes were damp. "Captain, I've spent my life wondering what happened to those colonists, to meet their descendants, to know they not only survived, but built a new civilization. It's beyond anything I could have imagined." Jack stepped back, letting them talk. The healing had begun, but there was still much work ahead. 2 branches of humanity, separated for generations, each following dramatically different paths, were learning to become family again. On the main view screen at the front of the room, images showed the preparations already underway for the joint mission to Earth. The Evergreen and the Horizon would depart in 1 week, beginning a journey that would officially close the circle that had been broken 3 centuries before. Jack looked around the room at humans from both civilizations beginning to build connections. The warning that had flashed across his console that first day seemed so distant now. Enemy warship detected. What had begun as a potential conflict had transformed into a historic reunion. New Terra had found its way home. The end.